Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. A little later in the program, we're going to be talking about the fiscal cliff and who is he? Why isn't he fiscal norm? But stay tuned for that. You want to hear that. But most importantly, I need to talk food. As a good wop, a good guinea, I want good food, and it's hard to find good sausage. It's hard to find good salami, but there is one place in Denver that makes it. It's a company called Mondo Vecchio.
Yes.
Because that just rolls off the tongue. Mark DeNittis, you are one of the owners of this little place.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I want to talk about this place because you've put a lot of sweat and equity, and
Certainly.
the owner has been working on this. Before we get to the meat of the story.
Certainly.
Do you like how that was
Absolutely,
good?
I like that.
Before we get to the meat of the story, let me just do a little backup. Why in the world would you want to get into meat processing? What's wrong with just going down to King Soopers and getting some Oscar Mayer salami?
Well, John, it's simple. Il Mondo Vecchio translates to the old world. It's what myself, as a first-generation Italian-American, and many others here in the States as well as still in the old country, make salami. It's sea salt, meat, and spices and ingredients, and maybe a little vino. And other than that, having grown up back in Massachusetts, and since I've left Massachusetts, especially out in the Midwest, and when I moved to Colorado, it was a lot harder to come by or find those things that I found growing up, not making professionally, but what we did in our basements and our attics. Right. I wanted that again, and that's what we created, and we had a huge following.
Right. For us Dagos, Colorado's got a lot of great things going for it.
Certainly.
But if you want to get good deli meats, if you want to get the good sausage to make the marinara, you want to get the good Romano cheese, it's harder and harder to find that stuff.
Certainly.
So you have this niche, and so you started with this business, and how long have you been at it?
3 years under USDA inspection. Myself and my partner, and a very small staff of one or two others.
When you say small, I mean, when I think of guys who make salami and sausage and all this other stuff, do you make prosciutto? There's no place in Colorado to get good prosciutto.
We have a Colorado culatello, which is a similar version of prosciutto, just a little different in the end result and the way it looks and
but still
shape.
Thin sliced.
Thin sliced salted ham, basically, in essence, yes.
It's hard to find that out here.
I have some.
Really? We'll talk to Black Market later.
Absolutely.
When I think about meat plants, I'm thinking Swift. I'm thinking the Montfort company up there. I'm thinking Tyson Foods that has all the factories. How many guys work for Il Mondo Vecchio?
There was the owner who did most of the administrative duties, so he really wasn't on site. There was myself as the plant operations manager. I had
And you're also an owner.
Also, right, minority owner, the founding member, my plant supervisor or production manager, who's a student as well, now finishing his culinary and bachelor's degree in food service management. And then I had a part-time staff, and then I would also work with a lot of the local culinary schools to create opportunities for learning an educational environment.
Future chefs would come and spend time with you to find out how these gourmet meats are actually made.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
You've been doing it for 3 years.
Yes.
How has the growth been?
The growth has been great.
Really?
For
it's a bad economy. Things are not supposed to grow in this economy.
Exactly.
Especially expensive meat when you can just buy Oscar Mayer.
Yeah, and a salami at anywhere from $25 to $50 a pound. Yeah, it wasn't cheap to make, and it wasn't. It's not a cheap item. We had been producing it under inspection for 3 years, following to what we understood the regulations to be, clearly defined, and doing it very well.
Every year?
Every year
lose money?
The first year was, we broke even first year out.
That's incredible.
And we grossed about approximately 100,000.
Right.
And that was 2010, 2011. We had just come in under 200K. This year we were at about 200K by about the end of July, beginning of August.
That's huge growth.
Yes. Yes.
Could you handle the capacity? Or you
Oh yeah, we were.
looking to grow?
We handled the capacity. We actually experienced the growth spurt and expanded our dry cure capacity. An additional 6,000 pounds on top of the 4,000 original capacity we had.
You're going to need more workers.
Yeah, we're going to need more workers. We were actually looking at a larger space because we had just broken into a significant amount of out-of-state business, particularly in Texas and the Houston area. We had opened up some sales opportunities there, which would have expanded from Houston into Dallas, San Antonio, and things along those lines. And that was a great growth spurt for us. And we were actually looking at going from our small 1,800 square foot facility into a 10 or 12,000 square foot
You're
facility.
living the dream.
Yes.
You're building your own business.
Yes.
You're making the food you love from the old country.
Correct.
You're expanding, you're hiring new people, you're adding to the economy, you're adding
Very much so.
to the tax base. This is all good stuff.
Yes.
Why are you out of business?
Well, after 3 years of doing what we understood to do under the USDA regulations, USDA local officials came in, our daily inspector.
Hang on, I want to understand this because it's definitely not my business. When you say daily inspectors, I get a sense that inspectors like restaurant inspectors, and I'm glad they exist, come in every now and then, poke around, make sure the rats aren't where they're not supposed to be, make sure you're doing things well and washing your hands and sign off and make sure you go.
Exactly.
You actually had somebody there
every day.
Every day.
Yes.
So there's 2 of you, maybe 2.5, 3 people working there, and an inspector.
An inspector would come at random times throughout the day. Never, it was.
What would they do?
They'd come in, check records, kind of watch what we were doing to make sure we were doing what we say we were doing based on our food flow plan or our HACCP, if you will, HACCP plan.
What's HACCP?
Hazard Analysis Critical Control Points. It's overseeing the flow of food in your operation for food safety. So unlike where your typical health department with the restaurant sector, they might show up twice, 3 times, maybe 4 times a year, we had an inspector show up every day that we were in production, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 2:30 p.m.
Did you ever get into any trouble with these guys?
No, I mean, there was a minor violation with a temperature control and just minor semantics about verbiage. We went from a calibrating thermometer to one that was guaranteed for life, not needing calibration. As long as we saw the support documentation, and we stopped calibrating, we went to a quarterly. But until that time, I hadn't been recording the weekly temps with this new thermometer. And we get an inspector every 6 months. So the new inspector had said, well, you're not doing this, you're not doing this.
Wait a second, let me see if I got this right. Basically, the old inspector you had for 6 months said, great, you got the right thermometer, fine, you're doing
print
fine.
This support
new guy comes in and goes, what the hell are you doing? That's all wrong.
Right. Yeah, more or less. And it wrote us up, and that's fine. I changed it. We addressed it right there on the spot and fixed it.
Okay.
So very minor in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, very minor, but also, so there's a lot of interpretation here that one guy, one guy says this, and the next guy goes and says the opposite.
Correct.
Which is pretty maddening when you're a small businessman and you want to focus in on making the best product, not dealing with the inspector.
Certainly.
As a consumer, I got to tell you, I'm glad the inspector's there.
Absolutely. And that was the thing is, it's been a hand-in-hand collaboration with the USDA because we were one of the only ones in Colorado really doing this in the fashion we're doing it.
Making it the old way.
Making it the old way. And we worked with them from day one. It's been a very positive relationship, even through our closing. I felt strongly that it was a pretty positive relationship, except we just hit a wall. And I think a lot of that came from some interpretations of some things.
Interpretations, all right. I read this to my kids every night. It's a great part. This is the Code of Federal Regulations for Animal and Animal Products, Part 200.
Yes.
To end, and starting on, let's see, there's only about 800 pages of
fairly fine print.
I can't
Lots
read
of
any
words,
of this.
Certainly.
All right, so for 3 years, things are going well. You and the inspectors, simpatico, they come in every day. They check your papers, check your work, make sure you're not spitting into the meat.
Correct.
All good stuff. And now you're out of business.
Correct.
I'm missing something. Help me out.
Well, we are too. One of the things is we still don't know yet. We've contacted UDAL's office, and there is a liaison that's going to begin an investigation, because what they never told us is why or where this came from, other than it came from above.
I'm sorry. Why? What came from above? And what is this pile of
this
crap in front of you?
pile? So this is the initial write-up for our dry sausage, saying we had to stop production and we had to put 3,000 pounds of product on retention. So
they said, and for what reason? What did you do wrong that you had to hold 3,000 pounds? You know what that is to a good wop like me? That's a week's worth of good salami.
Yes.
Why did you have to withhold and stop production and hold 3,000 pounds of your product, which is perishable?
The simple thing is that they said we couldn't prove a lethality for Salmonella, Listeria, Staphylococcus, and Clostridium.
Those are all
Pathogens.
All right. Wait. What were you doing differently the day before you got this versus the day after?
Nothing. We had been testing for Salmonella, we tested for Listeria, and we tested, more importantly, for water activity level. Water activity
level?
Drying.
Right. So that the meat dries properly?
The meat dries properly, and drying is by their own definition, as well as outside supported documents. Exactly, this book.
So you say that this book, it says drying is the right thing to do.
Correct. That book, as well as several other things like Salmonella compliance guidelines, drying, RTE categories, and all these technical terms.
I'm going to pretend I know what that means.
Yeah. So at its core, we had to further test or do more intensive testing for certain pathogens to allow us to at least release that inventory for sale. So that was very helpful for us.
So the 3,000 pounds of product,
correct,
you were at least able to sell?
Correct.
Were you able to get going again?
No.
Help me out.
We couldn't prove within our plan for dry sausage a lethality for Salmonella, which is what confused us
because you were doing that.
Correct. We were, and what was accepted was drying was a lethality for Clostridium and Listeria.
What did they want you to do differently?
Prove it. They wouldn't tell us, that's the thing.
They wouldn't tell you what you needed to do differently.
Correct.
But they wouldn't accept the proof that you've been giving them for the last 3 years.
Correct.
All right, I'm assuming then that the USDA, the guys who come up with these rules, I'm imagining that they had a change of rules.
Potentially.
And they could point to that change of rules. Did they?
No.
So they didn't tell you what rule change?
No.
So do you know if there was a rule change?
No.
You know, so Congress sets up the USDA, but it's the administration that runs it, and they can come up with these rules without going through Congress, and they won't tell you what's changed or if anything has changed.
Well, that's the thing. What they had said was prove a lethality for Salmonella.
Lethality meaning, tell me you've killed
or inactivated, made it inactive.
And you've been doing that to their satisfaction for 3 years.
Correct.
And then all of a sudden they said, sorry, we want a different proof. And you asked, okay, what proof? And they said, another proof.
So we attempted, within 15 minutes of this initial retention coming in, I had one of the top 3 process authorities in the country on the phone, asking, saying, this is going down, what can I do? My understanding is drying is the lethality, but they're telling me drying isn't the lethality for Salmonella, but they've accepted it for Listeria, and they'll accept it as a lethality for Clostridium, but they won't for Salmonella.
Where do you go from here? The business is closed.
Business is closed.
Is it closed or is it out of business?
It's out of business. We've closed it. We've
You're
sold
out of
off
a job.
equipment. Yes.
You're the biggest investor, the owner, is out of it. How much, not only the 3 years of sweat equity,
correct,
how much has been lost? And 3 or 4 jobs?
Oh gosh, 3 or 4 jobs, plus equipment, plus taking the hit on equipment that you can't sell it for full price. Right. You know, you have to kind of liquidate it basically. There's a significant loss of probably thousands.
Your American dream of bringing good food back to Colorado has now been squashed, and you don't even know why.
Correct.
Is there any place that I can still get some good salami?
There is. There are some folks in town. One in particular is actually a former student of mine. I used to teach at Johnson & Wales. Ian Chisholm at Amerigo Delicatus.
But as far as El Mondo Vecchio, there's none left.
Exactly. None left. We've sold off an amazing
What are you going to do
amount.
next? Do you know?
I've got a couple of things in the works, as always, as any good...
But I just want to finish with this.
Certainly.
If not for the mystery inspectors who've changed their mind and you don't know why, your business would still be thriving. You'd be employed.
Correct. We were looking at a larger operation.
And I would have salami.
Exactly.
Mark, thank you for joining us.
Certainly. Thank you. I appreciate it tremendously.
Stay tuned. You're going to need to hear this one, too.